Wait, I got it the wrong way. Hey, everybody. Hi, it's John Marcotte from Heroic Girls. We are here for the Heroic Girls Book Club. And with me, as always, is Vivian. Vivian, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Vivian.
Okay, that's good. I'm the founder of Heroic Girls, an organization that is dedicated to better representation for girls and women in media. And Vivian, what are your expertise, your qualifications to be here?
I am a Walt Disney Imagineer, but here on my own terms with John as a private citizen. And I'm also a professor of animation at UCLA.
Which is a new gig, and congratulations
yeah,
for that.
new gig. Thank you.
So, being as it's close to Halloween, the book we're talking about is Through the Woods by Emily Carroll. Had not heard of this one. I just went looking for spooky books for Halloween, and I think we kind of hit a good one here. Let's. I'll do the recap. I think I keep making you do it, so I'll try to recap it a little bit. I think we'll have to end up breaking it down into stories later because it's an anthology. This is not one singular story. It's a bunch of short stories all strung together. Emily Carroll is doing both art and story. This is solely her creation, front to back. And it's a collection of short stories that I would say are kind of like Victorian in nature. You know, that's the word I kept coming back to. They felt very Edgar Allan Poe, very... from that era, and the story seemed to be set in those kind of eras too. Let's start out like we normally do, talking about the art because I usually have little to contribute here. I'll say my three thoughts on art, and then you'll tell me how I'm wrong. So some things that I noticed were that number one, it's a limited color palette. It's not duotone exactly. There are usually there's a strong black is the only constant through the entire thing, but usually a chapter is either primarily red or primarily blue, with just every now and then breaking into some other colors. And the art itself is non-traditional paneled. You're not breaking it up into comic book panels the way that we normally do. She counts on other tricks to guide your eye through the pages. And she hand letters everything in non-traditional comic book lettering. We don't have speech bubbles or anything like that. She uses this kind of scratchy, scratchy writing that I think kind of is scary in itself, helps evoke that kind of, something bad's happening kind of feel. And the one comparable that I thought of is that it kind of reminded me of the work of Edward Gorey, which is a great illustrator from times past that kind of has that Addams Family type feel, like Charles Addams, that same type of era. But Gorey's were a little bit more dark than Charles Addams. But that was my one comparable that I thought of that her work reminded me a little bit of, although she's certainly her own beast. So what do you got for me? What do you notice is going to be way better than the things I just mentioned?
I think the looseness of it, and I feel like I say this anytime we have sort of a non-traditional comic. I just love a loose line. I love brushwork.
I think you're breaking up,
and she uses it to such. So it's on my end. Okay, give me a second.
So you're cutting in and out. I wasn't sure if it was going to stay that way or not.
Is it still bad?
No, you're fine right now.
Is that okay?
Yeah, you're good.
Oh, okay. I what you're saying, the limited color palette and the loose brushwork. Nope. Okay.
That might be. But okay, loose brushwork, loose style. Let's just we'll proceed forward, and if it keeps getting bad, then we might reschedule or something. Take a mulligan on this. We had to do it last week because I wasn't feeling well, and people will live with us. But let's try one more time and just see if we can get past whatever connection issues you're having down there.
Okay, I can also try hardlining in. So I think having a the loose brushwork for me is so much more interesting sometimes. It's great for horror than having something really clean, but also the for something like, let's say, monstrous, right?
Right.
It's a clinical type of horror, right? It's a scientific horror. But once we're in a world like this, which is like in the wild, a lot of this is Victorian, it makes so much more sense for the line work to get really crazy, to be able to see her hand and everything is super exciting. And it's also just very cinematic as well. So I think, it's just something that I absolutely adore. And I think you see stuff like this sometimes more in like fine art or in commercial art. And
I got another one for you about, and I'm probably mispronouncing his name because I've never actually heard it said, I don't think, but Gerald Scarfe, the guy who did the art for The Wall with Pink Floyd, has that kind of over-exaggerated, crazy look. And I think not all the way through the book, but you're right. When we hit monsters and things like that, that's when I get there. Or Dracula, motherfucker. When they showed Dracula, we had a little bit of that going on, where all of a sudden, just looks like the rules of the universe kind of break down the closer we get to something supernatural or monstrous.
Right, and the two people I thought of was there's a fine artist named Raymond Pettibon who does almost entirely black and white inks and very like kind of clean compositions. And then there's a commercial artist named Raymond Savignac, actually, and I have his book right over here. And he also kind of has this like really nice color blocking, almost UPA style, if you think of this in terms of animation, where you've got the red block and the blue block, and you're sort of looking at a block of color and understanding that it's the unknown. So I knowing that she wrote all of these and she did all the artwork for them, I'm shocked I'd never heard of her before. I'm almost just mad at myself that I'd never heard of her before. And also just off this book alone, like from the one book, like I would call myself a lifelong fan because I almost don't care what else I see from her. I'm just so excited by what this is. It's so great.
She's a creator. I wanted to say writer, but writer, artist, and we need a word to sum both those up. But a creator that, probably does not have the audience she deserves because of the way that comic books work in the United States. People that go to comic book shops, a lot of times they are really just looking for people in their underpants punching each other. So they're not looking for something like this. And people that would really enjoy this might pick it up and flip through and go, oh, it's a comic book, and not pay attention to how great it is. It's a fantastic use of the medium. It is so good. Horror really translates well to visuals, and you can do things in artistry that would be very hard to do in like a live action or anything like that. The exaggeration of form and things like that would not work if you made like a movie out of it or something like that. That you couldn't do a real life portrayal of these things, not the way that it's done here at any rate. And it's I had not heard of her before either. I am going to go through her back catalog, and I'll be keeping my eye out for her name from now on.
Totally.
So do you want to walk through the different stories, because they're interesting?
Yeah, I did make one more note here because I listened to a couple of interviews with her, and her dad used to interview her from the age she was about two years old and on, and would ask her about her dreams and would ask her about just anything, right? And then when she more recently, like as an adult, listened back to a lot of them, she, at a very young age, she was probably watching like inappropriate horror movies, and was talking about like, oh, I had a nightmare about this. And he's like, oh yeah, is it because we watched Tremors or something? She was quite young. And so, but it was interesting because in a different interview, I did hear her mentioning that she is a lot inspired by her dreams. So the sort of nightmare landscape that these stories are, and it's like a Grimm's fairy tale kind of a logic, right? Like a dream logic. So I thought that was super cool.
Yeah, I thought we had a framing mechanism. We'll say extremely loosely tied together. And it's number one, all the bad stuff pretty much comes from the woods. We have the woods in a way that they use it in Into the Woods, the musical. It's this place of unknown, a place of change, a place where anything can happen, except a little bit more depressing than Into the Woods, but usually full of scary things that you need to be on guard against. And the book opens and closes in bed, which I thought was really interesting. There's a prologue and an epilogue. The prologue is her telling about being in bed as a little girl and wondering about the things she has to reach up and turn off the light after she's done reading, and wondering if there's something right out there, right past where the light is protecting her, that'll grab her hand when she moves past it to turn off the light. Again, that fear of the unknown, fear of dark places. And that's very visceral. I think, everybody has that. So it's a really cool framing mechanism. Then way at the end, and we'll talk about the end when we get to the end, I guess, but there's a bookend that's kind of a modified Little Red Riding Hood story, which is also good.
Yeah, these are the image you had up before. But yeah, that one, such a good use of the page. So interesting to have the sunset over the trees. This top frame is them within the house, and then at the base of it, it sort of completes the composition of the house, of the tree line.
Yeah,
so cool.
Using an inset there and the night sky blending into the darkness of the forest, but from the wrong direction. Very cool. I agree. That's awesome.
Then red sun, red frame with the danger of the light coming in, and then you can kind of see there's like a teeny tiny bit of color down here at the bottom, but it's almost negligible. And her education was in animation, so she talks a lot about, how do you lead the eye? Where does the eye go and stuff like that? And I think even just in terms of how she lays out the action when things are suspenseful, like a scene like this, and then when the danger actually comes, it's so cool.
Right. So I guess we should talk about this. This is the first of the 5 stories, I think. Which is Our Neighbor's House, and it's a story, set, I'm going to say, like Little House on the Prairie times. It feels like that kind of era, and it's 3 siblings, and in every story we only get one person's point of view. It's third person narrator or sometimes first person, but we don't ever get inside anyone's head but the primary narrator. And their father leaves on a trip, and he says if he's not back in 3 days, they should go to their neighbor's house. And every night, one of the children wakes up and in the morning and says that they saw a man with a wide-brimmed hat, and then they disappear the next night. So it starts out with all 3 siblings, and then a night passes, and it's the day that their father's supposed to return. The other 2 siblings have gone missing, and the oldest sibling has looked everywhere for them and can't find them. And then she goes to sleep, and then she says, I know my father's dead because he didn't return. And then it ends with her walking to the neighbor's house, and she makes it all the way there and opens the door, and we're led to believe it's the man with the wide-brimmed hat is inside the neighbor's house and reaching out to grab her at the end. So that's our narrative, and it struck me that we may have an unreliable narrator in this case. So it's a well-constructed little short story, and if you were looking for concrete endings, you're not going to be happy with this short story collection. This is a short story collection filled with ambiguity of the best kind, which it lets your imagination take over at the end. And there are a lot of ways to interpret what happened in this story. And did you have any thoughts? I don't want to jump the gun. I had one idea that is a possibility that's probably a little out there, but
let's hear it.
All right. Well, mine was that she might be the man in the wide-brimmed hat. We see the hat underneath the bed and on the bed after the other siblings have left, and so we might have this kind of like multiple personality syndrome type psycho type situation where she has gone crazy and killed her siblings or something like that in the middle of the night. That's why they're gone. And that could be wrong, but that's the piece that I kept coming back to, is that the hat's in the house. So, where did the hat come from? Why was it there? And if it was in the house, how did it get to the neighbors when she went to the neighbors? And so that was my connective tissue, was that there might be a hint that there's something wrong with her. That she is the man in that. Now, it's a stretch, probably. It's not that I would not call that a definite thing at all, but that was the narrative I was playing with in my head. What did you come up with? What did you think happened?
I was thinking that he might be like the embodiment of winter. I was thinking about, how sometimes tales like this are cautionary and sometimes they're just a little out there, right? And so I think something that's interesting at the end is when he reaches out to grab her, she goes willingly. She's smiling, and so to me that there's a little bit of a, what is not frostbite, but what is it, exposure? Like when you're dying of exposure, and you kind of like, you start to feel like, oh, everything's fine and I'm warm, and but you're freezing to death. One thing I think is that she does in almost all the stories is she includes things in the frame and in the illustrations that aren't discussed. So I wanted to point this out here. So her two sisters are here in this frame, right?
Yeah.
And then you can assume that this is her father.
Right.
But who's that woman? Right.
Right.
And so it kind of points to the idea that if she says that she knows her father's dead, then probably that other person would be her mother, and that her mother is dead, right? So it's kind of like creating a backstory and then just building it into the images so that you can see them kind of take it in as it comes, the exact same way that the hat is sort of in the house and moving around, like whoever this person is, entity is, like they have full reign of the house.
Yeah. And we assume the siblings went willingly as well, because they were. What did the man with the wide brim hat say? He said something to each of them, and I'm trying to remember what it was.
He said
that
he showed his teeth.
Oh, well, that's creepy.
Yep.
Tall man with a smile that showed his teeth, but that's all they would ever say about him. And yeah, I do think him as a personification or a metaphor for cold and winter and basically the dying season might be right. And that's another perfectly valid way to interpret it. That's even one step further into the crazy than my not in, and again, not in a bad way. That it's the harshness of winter that has taken their father from them and is slowly taking the kids one at a time as they're left on their own, is another good way to do it. But just such evocative art, such good uses of like washes in here to like give you different like nuances and shading. It's just a pretty creepy book. I love this thing so much.
But the other question I had is, if you look at the framing when they're all playing, like before they realize something's gone wrong, right? The older sister is always separate. So even if when they say we played, the sister is doing cards separately. We cleaned, the sister cleaned separately.
Right.
And when it comes time to actually leave, the oldest sister is the one who says that she doesn't want to go.
Right.
And do what the dad said. So what do you think that at that point they had already been infected, or that the man in the wide brim hat had already somehow accessed?
I think, let's go with the, freezing to death type theory, because on the third day we were struck by a strange lethargy. They were they started falling asleep. And again, going back to that whole idea that they're dying at that point, they don't even know it. The man with the wide brimmed hat that shows his teeth is the one that's, he's Charon. He's the ferryman. He's taking, it's death. Death is coming for them one at a time as they freeze to death. And her physical, she's imagining a physical embodiment, like I can't find my sister anymore, but the body's still there, but she is gone. That would be another way of looking at it. One at a time, they're slipping into death, and she's realizing that her sisters are gone. It, again, ambiguous ending. You can't, put a definite pin on anything, but I think that's a good way of interpreting it. And then I like that one. Dark hat smiles and shows just his teeth. Like you get that feeling of like he's bony. And I like it. It's death. I'm the final answer. Death. So
all right.
So, all right. So yeah, that was a good one. So let's see here. Second story. A lady's hands are cold. This was the one I had the least theories about, but was cool. There were pieces of imagery that I pulled out that I thought were really neat, and I could see kind of where we were going with it. But I was really wanting to get a message together that I wasn't able to. So, do you want to sum up the story this time? I did the last one.
Yeah. So this is a pretty. For me, it felt a lot like kind of a Bluebeard type fairy
I used
tale.
that same analogy. Yep.
Nice. About a woman who goes to, and this looks a little French. Sorry, going back out again. So Emily Carroll is from Canada, from Ontario. And so I feel like a lot of this imagery, which seems kind of Victorian, to me, this seems a little French. I've never been to Canada before, but I'm like, oh, is this like French Canadian royalty? Maybe. Who knows? American fairy tales of Canada. So she arrives at her husband's house where she hears creepy singing at night that kind of leads her around the house, and it leads her to discover the previous wife, who has been dismembered and hidden throughout a mansion. And
in the walls, the floors, and
in the walls, at the base of the stairs. And the whole thing has sort of a, to me, I was imagining sort of a nursery rhyme or a chanting, a dirge that sort of goes through it. Really wonderful rhyming scheme. And in the way of, I would say maybe The Ring, when you think that maybe when you find the body, that you've solved the mystery, but in fact, finding the body just leads to more danger.
Right.
So,
let's point out, I mean, the implication, I think, is clear that the husband, this is a previous wife that he has chopped up into bits and hidden in the walls. So that's, and while he's gone, he's on a trip for several days, is when the new wife dismisses all the servants and takes an axe and starts ripping the place apart looking for it. And this was an arranged marriage. Her parents basically said, this is the guy you're marrying, and sent her off. It was someone she had never even met before. So we never even really get a good look at him. I mean, there's a lot of times when we see like his back or shoulder, and they use the what I'm going to call the Japanese trick of making sure you can't see his eyes, the shadow across the eyes, which is that whole scene of impersonality of danger from somebody. So
I think this one was a pretty good.
The eating meat.
This was their first night together. Which was just very upsetting.
Very upsetting. And right previous to that, they made a big note of, they had put a ribbon of red around her throat. So I went, vampires. We're heading for vampires. I know what's going on here. We got red at the throat, and this guy is, eating the bloody meat. It's vampires. And then as far as I know, it's not vampires. To be honest, it still could be. So and then to, I guess, finish off the story, she reassembles the body and ties each piece to the other piece with red ribbon again, that symbolism of being cut or something like that. And when she reconstructs the wife is not upset at the husband for chopping her up. She's upset at her for taking her place, even though there's really nothing she could have done about it. She didn't know she existed. And so she, this supernatural being that she has, reconstructed, is now trying to kill her. And so she runs off into the woods. And then at the very end, it appears to me that she has died. The new bride has died as well, and has turned into another creature, just like the first bride or something. Or maybe whether it was from exposure, whether the other bride caught up to her and was a vampire, but she's also got all the colors sucked out of her, and she has that hollowed look, all the colors sucked out of her clothing. If you weren't paying attention, you might even think that was the monster there, but it's not. It's she's wearing the same dress that our heroine was a little earlier. So, and her eyes during the whole thing are becoming more and more sunken and scary. But here she is, and there's the little flowers down the front of her dress that she has the entire book, and but all the other colors gone from her. She's looking very skeletal, and I felt like, hey, she's become a part of the myth. She's
okay, so keep that one up. I'm going to show a page before.
That's here.
Yep. Look at her hands.
Where? Oh.
So her hands go from red when she's running out of the house.
Right.
She departs, and then you get this close up, and her hands have become cold.
Right.
So
oh yeah. She's gotten
cold hand. I thought she was possessed at the end.
Maybe possessed. And at the end though, you think the lady with the cold hands is the woman that she's dug up. I feel like it's her. And yeah, so and I think you could just going into metaphor land again, it could be the idea of this whole like a piece of her dies and she's just become a thing in this guy's household. He doesn't seem to really care about her at all. It's this like kind of business arrangement that they made where her parents sold her off to this guy.
This is so good.
All right,
it's so cool.
let's do the song. This is when she keeps hearing singing at night. This is what she hears. I married my love to the springtime, but by summer he locked me away. He murdered me dead. By the autumn and by winter, I was naught but decay. It's cold where I am, so lonely, but in loneliness I will remain, unloved, unavenged, and forgotten until I am whole once again. So we have the idea of until I am whole once again. That's where she gets the idea that she needs to put these pieces back together to help the spirit get back together. And again, it's a big twist that after she does all this assembly, you think that the spirit's going to be mad at the husband, but no, she's mad at her. So yeah, I thought there might be something to this whole idea of, her losing her sense of self, of sense of personality, of just becoming an object in this guy's house rather than an actual real life person. Yeah, you definitely got the Bluebeard, feeling from this. Bluebeard's a famous old, not wives' tale, but a story where, the woman's marries a guy and he says she can go in any room that she wants to, but never open this door. And then, of course, she's overcome with curiosity, can't stop herself, opens the door, there's blood and gore in there. And he said, well, now they open the door, I got to kill you. And so he chops her up. And, they could have been happy if she hadn't done that.
If only she wasn't so curious.
Yeah,
the version I heard when I was, not growing up, but in the Grimm's version that I had read was like her previous 6 sisters or something. Like she's the 7th sister,
right.
and then as they all get married before her, and then and never come back, and then the next sister gets married to the same guy, and the next sister gets married to the same guy.
I forgot about that aspect of the story because that is absolutely accurate, and it's a trope that has been used in a lot of different ways by a lot of different people. Kurt Vonnegut made a whole novel out of it, which is very cool. And so there are, I have not read the original in a very long time. I just have, stuck in the recesses of my brain the idea of don't open the door or else you're going to get chopped up into bits. And
it's like, how are you supposed to be a good wife? Like, don't listen to the haunted voices pouring out from the walls. Something else I thought was really interesting is that, and thank you, Ryan, for appreciating our theories. To me, I got the impression that everything was the original wife, the dismembered wife, and that the husband had married her and married into her wealth.
Oh, I see.
Based off of these ones here.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is difficult. Like my lands, my mansion.
Yeah.
Right. So she could just have ownership as the previous wife, but I was also like, oh, that is kind of interesting to think that, it could be, he could be like a true ne'er-do-well. Yeah.
And killed her afterwards to take her land. That is a cool thing I didn't notice. And I just think it was interesting that she is pieced together with the same red ribbon that was at the original wife's throat. And that's where she was cut. So I'm like, did the wife get beheaded or something? I want to make so again, you're not going to get that solid answer here, but it still had a lot of the young woman sent to Dracula's castle feel for me. And I ultimately, even after we get this reanimated corpse bride that's chasing her into the woods, I still feel like the husband's the villain of the piece. He's the guy that did all this stuff, got it all set into motion. And I think he's our bad guy, if you have to label someone a bad guy. The original wife is just misguided, and vengeful in a way that spirits sometimes can be, not necessarily directed at the right person, but just mad at everyone because of how they were treated. So yet another cool story. That was the one that I think confused me at least the most. I mean, I shouldn't say confused, that I didn't have as clear a theory about as I did for some of the other ones, in which it's not a bad thing. I do not take that as a slight against the storytelling. It's fantastic. It's a story. These are stories that allow you to try and figure them out. They're kind of daring you to. So, all right. So next up is His Face All Red. This was the only one that had a male protagonist. I thought I'd written down as I was going through the book. I said, "Oh, look, it's all female protagonists," and then I had to go back and go, "Oh no, I got one dude in here ruining it for me." So, His Face Is All Red is about this guy. We see him on the right here. Am I right? And he is his brother is there in the blue, and he has a popular older brother that was more successful. They're farmers, and he has a bunch of animals. The successful brother does. The other guy doesn't. He has a beautiful wife. The other brother does not. And so one day, a beast comes and kills some of the older brother's animals, and they think it's a beast from the woods, which are supposed to be haunted and everything. Don't go in there. And but the brother wants to go, and he drags the younger brother with him. And they go out in the middle of the woods, and they find a big hole in the ground, which that smells of lilac, which I thought was an interesting detail. And the younger brother, our narrator, is kind of creeped out by it, but the older brother says, "Oh, it's just one of those things." He doesn't seem to care about that at all. And they find a wolf. They found a wolf that is dead, and the older brother goes, "That we're solved. That was it. It was this wolf that had killed my animals. We can go back home." At which case, the younger brother kills him and throws him into this lilac-scented hole, and goes back and takes one scrap of the guy's clothing, goes back into town and says, "Oh, we went out and this beast killed him, but I managed to slay the beast, and I, returned with one scrap of his jacket. It barely escaped with my life." And they get this whole idea that he gets his brother's land, his animals, maybe his wife. I mean, I kind of felt like that might be thrown in part of the deal at this point. He basically was trying to become his older brother. And for 3 days, that worked. And then his older brother walks back into town and says, "Oh, I just got lost." And he's there, he's alive, and he's fully whole. Even his clothing is not ripped, even though the guy still has a scrap of his jacket. So this is where we kind of, takes the right turn. We're like, who is the brother? Is it really him? Is it some creature pretending to be him? What is its motivation? What is it trying to accomplish? And a little bit later, it says that it won't look at him. The new brother, or the old brother, we don't know, will not look at the younger brother. And he comes over to the younger brother's house, and he digs a big hole, which to me said, "Oh, it's another one of these holes that smells of lilac that goes nowhere," and then leaves. And then the end of the story is the younger brother tying a rope off and climbing all the way down to the bottom of the hole, and then making a bed down there and sleeping in this like dark underneath the ground, and then, and scene. So you want to take the first swing at this one?
I would say this is, to me, like, this really cemented in, because I was getting Grimm's vibes from the first two. This is truly the, peasant village with with a local hero, and who has a beautiful wife, and a villainous wolf on the outskirts, and what are you going to do about it, right?
Yeah.
And then of course it just takes this horrible Emily Carroll twist. So for, like, obviously the lilac smelling hole is, it's such a Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Something that can, like, pop out a doppelganger,
Right.
that can act as a facsimile of whoever got thrown into it. And that he's making another one, you kind of makes you feel like he's going to put his younger brother down in there too.
No need. He's going on his own.
Yes, he did go on his own. So this one was called His Face All Red, right? Which makes you think of, like, oh, you're red in the face, or, you're ashamed of yourself. And so, like, it almost seemed like his his shame for what he had done and murdering his brother somehow manifested another brother who was aware of that shame, and that's why they'll never meet each other's eyes.
I had a couple. I do agree with you that the framing is pure Grimm's fairy tales. Specifically, you were talking about the French influences. This felt very Beauty and the Beast-ish to me. It had that kind of imagery and everything. But the two stories that it reminded me of, the most obvious to me was Cain and Abel. It's the younger brother that doesn't have animals. Like Abel was the one that had animals and made a sacrifice of animals before God, and he was favored, and so the younger brother killed him out of jealousy. This is a story about jealousy. The younger brother was jealous of the older brother and killed him as a result of it. I was thinking of the lilac hole as death, that's just symbolic of death. You're thrown in there, you're gone forever. And it is still a mystery how the one brother came back. But I think at the end, the younger brother may have committed suicide. And beyond that, I think he might have been the one that killed the older brother's animals in the first place. I think he might have been over there doing it because he's jealous of him. He's consumed with jealousy to the point where out of nowhere, he killed him, for no reason. The older brother had done nothing to him except he was more popular than he was. People liked him better, and he was more successful. So there was nothing concrete that the older brother had ever done to the younger brother, and he was just consumed with jealousy and killed him. And then one other story it reminded me of a little bit was the Edgar Allan Poe's Cask of Amontillado, where like another jealousy story where they go out together and he gets them drunk and then he walls them up in the basement in the wine cellar and leaves them there basically to die. And that's, I don't know, kind of felt like that to me when he threw him into the lilac scented hole. Like he's put him away and he's going to be gone forever, and that didn't work out too well. So the Cain and Abel thing I thought was a real obvious kind of maybe source material for this story. There were several parallel elements.
I do think it was interesting that, like you mentioned, there's only one character whose thoughts you're hearing.
Yeah.
And you're looking at this character, the main character, who is jealous and a jerk, right, and a murderer, and he never seems particularly happy ever. No. Even after his brother is dead, he's never like, I've accomplished something. He just seems upset and stressed out the whole time, and which to me made it even more darker. Why he did what he did. I wanted to point out which my favorite frames, which was him shooting. This is how the murder took place. Right, it's the gunshot, right? Yeah, and this just like gave me chills. I love just like having the red come in for the light. It's genius.
Yep, and it's the
bad. That was when the brother shot the wolf, and then they repeat it again for when he kills the.
Good. Yeah. For
when the younger brother kills the elder brother.
Yep, it's the younger brother. I'm not sure. Was he never happy, or did we never see the parts where he's happy? Because we still open the story with the older brother already having returned from the dead and then becoming even more popular because basically he came back from the dead. He walked out of the woods after the guy said he was killed. And then we flash back to all the time before then, leading up to the murder. We don't get a lot of stuff that shows what happened after he had killed his brother and before the brother reappeared. And the older brother came back after 3 days. So you want to get your biblical references in there. We have the 3 days, which was also a repeat from the first story where the father would be back in 3 days. So there's an interesting. I doubt that was accidental. Now there may not be a strict like one-to-one religious allegory being made there, but I think someone returning after 3 days from being absent or being dead is purposeful. That's just too good an imagery to and used multiple times.
For sure. I mean, I would say it's foundationally biblical, but link it back to Grimm's in terms of this, where it's like, two brothers. That's the trope, right? Right. Second wife, that's the trope.
I guess. And a lot of them, I think jealousy is a theme in the last two stories, and I think it's going to be a theme coming up. the first wife is actually jealous of the second wife in the lady's hands are cold, and then in his face is all red. The brother is jealous of the older brother. That whole sense of envy causing people to do horrible things. So
Yeah.
yeah. All right, you wanna tackle my friend Janna?
My friend Janna is about two friends. I would say maybe capital F friends, since I feel like we always end up saying, but do they love each other or do they love each other?
That's usually me, but yeah, you go ahead this time.
I was getting kind of a sapphic read from this. I thought maybe like they would have, there was something more to the depth of their relationship than just
it was either that or like single white female. We're somewhere on that spectrum.
We're somewhere in there.
Yeah.
So two friends, Janna and the protagonist, Yvonne.
We get her name once, Yvonne.
Okay. And so Yvonne is our main character, and they have started scamming the locals by making them think that Janna can speak to the dead.
Yeah. And
I would say there was some kind of, what is the word? Not exorcism. What's the opposite of an exorcism?
Seance.
Possession.
Oh, possession, yeah.
So at some point, a possession took place, consumed Janna, and then moved on to Yvonne, which was our cliffhanger ending.
Right. Well, and that was the kicker, is that they were pretending they could see the dead and everything, but Yvonne could actually see this ghostly presence hovering around her friend Janna, and didn't think she could ever tell her or be believed that was there, that it was real, because of the fact that they were pulling this scam. It's a scam that they talked about ending multiple times. They kept discussing, that it was wrong, but they couldn't figure out a way to end it where people would believe that it was over, that they weren't, it wasn't real anymore. They said, what if I got knocked on the head? Well, that wouldn't do it. And said, what if you got a near-death experience? Then they think you're even closer to the spirit world. There's nothing that they could do to shake people's belief that she could do this. So yeah, and then Janna like disappears. That's one of the things. She's just gone. We don't see what happened to Janna. And then Yvonne, another person, manages to see the supernatural presence thing circling around her. And all right, so do you want to take the stab at what this one's about, or do you have any theories, anything that came to mind?
Well, so what I was thinking, these two women come up with this whole scam, and I this to me felt the most modern so far. This felt very Jane Austen-y. Yvonne,
there it is. The one time it's said, but it's big.
I really got kind of a Jane Austen vibe from this. These two women who kind of go do an undertaking, and but except for, rather than going to a ball or getting married, their undertaking is scamming people by putting Yvonne in the walls, creating an ambience while Janna fakes, possession and being able to speak with the spirit world. What I got from it was that by doing what they were doing, they somehow actually made contact and like invited something through the veil, so to speak.
I'm going to do a thing I don't think I've done before, which is recommend a movie, and that is Ouija 2, not the first one, which was a steaming pile of garbage, but Ouija 2, directed by my friend Mike Flanagan, the guy who did Haunting a Hill House, and it follows this same plot. There's a scammer psychic back in the 60s that taps into something real, and it goes very badly after that. So that's the source of the horror. But my kind of thought about this story was that that maybe the Yvonne there was another like jealous friend in the shadow of her, more selfish. She's the one that had to hide in the walls, and that she was always kind of presented looking like Marcy falling behind Peppermint Patty. She was this secondary character, kind of. She was the one in the shadows, where her friend was the one that got all the attention and the glory and everything. And I thought, well, what if we had that this thing or whatever was a personification of jealousy or rage or something like that? And I thought maybe the spirit of the monster was her, that maybe she was the one that was like always hovering over her friend and everything. And at some point, not too much and took her on, that she was the creature. And again, I don't, if you're looking for solid things in the text to completely support that, you're not going to find it. That's not the way this book works. But that was my takeaway. I thought that was, what we might have stumbled into. Did you have any thoughts about? Well, we had already talked about that.
Well, I think just this is so scary to me. The people who. The people who are coming to them who need help and all of their that's also a lot of negative feelings, right? That they are basically making light of, right? Because they call it like, oh, it's a splendid diversion to do these things to these people, which really sucks. But I like your theory a lot, that it's it's a living manifestation.
I even considered, if I started out going, we're in the Sixth Sense. She's dead the whole time. The wolf friend really can't see spirits, and she doesn't know she's dead. That was my first thought. But then at the end, got ruined because someone else could see Yvonne there. But it is worth noting that unlike the more traditional scam that a fake psychic might do, they're not giving people comforting thoughts. They're like, hey, he's blind in a pit, can't see anyone, wailing, gnashing his teeth for 1,000 years. Everyone's blind. Where's that? I mean, every message from the afterlife is that it's this horrible hellhole of a place that you don't want. It's horrific, and for some reason, people are eating it up. They love the fact that their loved ones are getting tortured or tormented. And that keeps people coming back. If that's what's out there, I'm just going to go on record. Don't tell me, because I don't want to know. I might as well enjoy what I got.
I did love that, the descent into psychosis is best illustrated by a sketchbook. And I feel like you always see that in like serial killers, and when people get possessed, they start making these wild drawings, and it's like it kind of looks like any artist's sketchbook, where it's like your stray thoughts, and everything all together. But
there is the
sketchbook, which is so fun.
It's fun. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, there's like arteries and like birds falling into the ocean, and
so cool. There's and I love how hard this page made you work to get the information out of it, so that it because you kept having to, you were having to turn the book to read some of the writing that's sideways and follow it, and again, because it's kind of truly sketchbooky, there are disparate images that are running into each other, and you got to kind of separate them in your mind and look at each one separately. This is a few pages that really, I took longer on these 2 pages than any other pages in the book, because it wasn't straightforward in the way it was presenting information at all. And it's just fragments of ideas and stuff. She took it as this complete sign of madness. I'm not sure it was that. It's just someone who is maybe dealing in the tropes of scaring people, writes down this creepy imagery and stuff as it comes to her, and that this is her thing. But
they're actually work notes.
Yeah, work notes, exactly. when your job is pretending to speak to the dead and telling everyone that basically that they're in hell, and maybe you want to take some hellish notes. But again, like everything else. Oh, I want to get the last frame here because it's so good. Here, let me see if I can get that. You seeing it?
Yeah,
right there. There's Yvonne at the end, all possessed with the same creature that we saw hovering around her friend there at the beginning. And
this one had a lot of really, every one of these stories has something that would like jump out as being the marquee image to illustrate that story. But for this one, when she finds Janna and Janna's being possessed, like that whole sequence of going to her house in the night.
Yeah.
The
killer, but go ahead.
But even everything leading up to it, right? Because her sister goes to a window, which I read as a second story window, which is even more scary, right? That Janna, look at that. Like, it's so freaky. This book candle blows out, and
and they call back to it a couple times. They became sort of fascinated with death early in life when they found a dead hare, a dead rabbit sitting on the side of the road. And Janna was one that was willing to poke it and touch it, and Yvonne was not. And so was there something there? Did they, being disrespectful of the dead stirs something up. I mean, I have my theory, and you can see it that way, but you can very equally just shift over to what you were saying and say, yeah, they really did, stir up some supernatural force that was angry at them for kind of abusing this idea of talking to the dead, and said, "You want to meet dead people? Well, we can arrange that."
Here we are.
Here we are.
Producer Patty, can you pull that image up again? Because I wanted to point something out, because her use of how she uses her frames are amazing.
Yeah.
So Yvonne has been running with this lantern, right?
Yeah.
Having the lantern canted in one direction in the frame and then to the other continues the motion of the lantern swinging. And it's and like especially like that the candle has finally blown out, right? Yeah. So that color that's behind Janna has been being carried by the main character to Janna.
Yeah.
Maybe that's like artistically, I would say like that's the culmination of your theory, John, right? Yeah. Like this literally something burning being held by the main character burns Janna up. So
yeah, I mean it's you can kind of see a vein and arterial system in the creature every now and then. There are flashes of it. Mm-hmm. This looks, to me like the blood is getting pulled out of her eyes, which is, I'm not a doctor, but that's not good. So this is obviously,
I'm no doctor.
No, I'm no doctor. But you also, is it something in the physical world too? You don't think of ghosts as normally disappearing the body. The body's gone at the end of mm-hmm. of this. So a lot of possible things that could have happened. I had this Cole, obsessed with insanely jealous or possessive maybe of her friend, and eventually just snapped storyline played out in my head. But mm-hmm. hey, the whole kind of we stirred up the evil spirits we shouldn't have messed with certainly works too. But at the end, the spirit that is now following her around. Number one, it's fully red and engorged and everything like that.
Yeah.
And she's not scared. She looks angry and pissed off, and you don't want to mess with her at the end of it. So I thought that's the flashes of anger and possessiveness and stuff that led to her friend dying. Was this look right here? That's going to lead to somebody dying right there.
Yep.
So. Yeah, that was my my take on that one. Okay, we got one more. The nesting place. Do you want to talk about the nesting place?
Oh man. Okay. So a young woman, Belle, has returned from boarding school, and she's going to spend a holiday with her brother and her brother's new wife, and she's not looking forward to it. Mm-hmm. And she finally meets the brother's new wife, and I don't even know how to and the brother's new wife has a malady of some sort, which she calls her babies.
Right.
You
it takes
find
a while
out
to get there, but yes, yeah.
It takes a while to get there. You find out from the housekeeper that at a young age, around the age that Belle is now, that the wife, is her name Lucy? Rebecca.
I didn't write down the names for this one. I should have. But Madame Beauchamp.
Rebecca. Which I thought was interesting because of Hitchcock and Daphne du Maurier. But so Rebecca, at a young age, crawled into a cave and something befell her there. And but she continued to grow up, and now she's married to Belle, the protagonist's brother. She's married to the protagonist's brother. And do you want me to just go all the way to the end?
Yeah, just go ahead. Then we can talk about what we think is going on. I'll throw in something if I think there's a moment that I think was important.
So Belle has, because of that incident in the forest, Belle is also warned not to wander around in the woods. She does anyway. She goes deep into a cave where she discovers that Rebecca is basically filled with worms. Yeah, she's a hive mind of a bunch of alien insect looking things. It's, I would put it more in the supernatural end than this isn't science fiction. This is more reanimated corpse worms or something like that. Who knows? Yeah,
they're coming out of her eye sockets, and her jaws come unhinged. It is super creepy.
Yeah, she is a not a person.
Yeah.
She is not a human being anymore. She basically was replaced as a young girl and has been growing up and faking this human facade because she is worms. The protagonist is then kind of like, and you see throughout the story that she does have a leg brace on. Now she's bedridden after this encounter with Rebecca, and the brother is going to leave the two of them alone.
Right.
And Belle is basically able to outsmart Rebecca before she can be.
Yeah, Rebecca wants Belle because she's young and has pliable skin, unlike the housekeeper who she had tried. She's looking for a home for her babies, basically to turn someone into another worm creature like she is. She has worm creature babies down in the cave, and she wants to infect Belle. And she says, "Oh, you'll be better. You know, we'll fix your leg and everything. You'll be more popular and everything." Because Belle is Daria from Beavis and Butthead. She is this stoic, even keeled, doesn't want to go outside. I don't want to go outside and have fun. She wants to read a book inside, and she, they keep trying to get her to go out and nature, and you can go swimming, and she's like, nope, don't want to do any of that. And so it's interesting, the contrast, because Rebecca is pictured as beautiful and full of life, and then our protagonist Belle is pictured kind of short and stumpy, dowdy and dour, just someone who does not look like much fun at all. So I mean, if you just based on appearances, you'd think, oh, Rebecca's the one that you want to hang out with, but it turns out she's actually the monster. So
literally a monster. And I think you kind of get the idea that Rebecca is like overflowing and she doesn't have a place to keep her extra worms, and so she needs places to put them. She's about to move to the city with her new husband, thinking that she's going to be, and this is what she wants, thinking she's going to be able to infect a lot of people. Rebecca outsmarts her by telling Rebecca that, once you go to the city, it's going to be smoky and it's not going to be like fresh air, like out here in the woods, and the doctors are going to chop you up. And so,
that eventually someone will get opened up, they'll find the worms, and they'll stick her babies into jars and everything, which probably would happen at some point. Someone would get caught, and then that would be the, start of this kind of war, and her children that she seems to care about a lot would end up dying. So
and so then the twist at the end is that her Belle's brother is also seems to have already been infected himself.
He's driving her back home after she has outsmarted Rebecca. He's driving Belle back to the boarding school, and you look over and you can see his teeth moving around, which was one of the early signs that something was off with Becca, was that that her mouth didn't seem to be solid, because it's made up, I guess, of individual worms under there, and they're all doing different things. So it's, if you're looking for the creepy imagery, this is the one that has it.
This was easily the most, I don't know why it was the most upsetting.
Yeah.
That is so upsetting.
That's her mouth wide open, so you can just see teeth and worms. There's not a solid organ in her. She's just a stack of worms. So, if you've ever imagined what's inside Ted Cruz, this is it. It's right here. They've managed to finally conceptualize that. Most physically horrific. Everything else was more this kind of like supernatural ghost on the moor type story. This one is the one that's like, oh man, these are physical things that are gonna get in you, eat your brain, infect you. It had a much more visceral fear than the ghost story type things that we were getting before. This is the one that made you say, "Oh man, please God, let this just be a story."
I think it was kind of interesting too, because it's sort of framed around, the main character Mabel has lost her mother. It seems like maybe has happened recently. By the way, the two siblings are talking about it, and so. This image to me, the kind of opening image of of this short story, this looks like a Marie Cassatt sketch. And Marie Cassatt, of course, is known for her mother and babies paintings.
Of course.
And so and
I was just going to say that, but you go ahead.
Indeed, one of the most prolific female artists of the Impressionists. But kind of having that put up against Rebecca with the worms coming out of her eyes, going, "My babies."
Yeah.
And then that's ultimately how Rebecca's able to what Mabel's able to best Rebecca is by saying like, you're calling yourself a good mother, but you're going to put them in danger by moving to the city.
Right. So I thought it was interesting that this was the first time that I smelled the rat with Rebecca. Was right here. She introduces herself, and she says, "I'm Rebecca. You must be Mabel." She says, "Belle, actually. Ah, Belle, as in Belle et la Bête, which is French for beautiful and stupid." So that was which I thought that's something to say. I remember this much French from like grade school. I took French 12 years and then moved to California and said Spanish. So, but I didn't know enough to translate that. And I went, is that some idiom or is that just like a really rude thing to say to somebody?
Just incredibly horrible. For me, it was driving to a house in the middle of nowhere and knowing that Rebecca's there. And I'm kind of like, whoa, Manderley and, it's Danger Woman. So that was where my mind went. Uh-oh. I can't hear you.
I got it. I'm back on. I bumped the mic with my hand and hit the mute button.
Ah.
So what was interesting to me is that the title of the story is The Nesting Place, and Belle herself is the nesting place. That's where the nest for the babies is. And she, again, but her outsmarting moment is to make herself so inhospitable. Her darkness, her dourness, her imagination to always think the worst thing about stuff is what saves her, is what by painting a word picture so vivid of how awful things will be if she gets infected is how she escapes. And I thought that was like a really kind of cool touch. And I think you're essentially right though in the whole mother looking out for their children theme is the connecting tissue here. And it is interesting because we have a monster that is defeated because it cares for its young. That is basically it, that it has matronly instincts and cares more about its children than it does about killing her. So decides that it needs to stay in the countryside and everything else, and gets outsmarted. And I don't know if I have a solid theory about this. It's like, is there a metaphor or something? And maybe it's just the whole idea of God damn. Yeah, there's something to pack up over your bed for tonight. But maybe the is her resistance to happiness. There's nothing, she feels there's nothing wrong with her being maybe slightly depressed and sour, having this introvert outlook on life, and that she's like, I don't need thank you, producer Patty, that was perfect imagery for that, or captioning for that. But that maybe she feels like all this like, come out and swim, come out and do this and stuff like that. They're trying to infect her with their happiness and she wants nothing to do with it. But that's certainly not explicit in the text and probably falls apart under close scrutiny. It was just an idea that I kind of had about it. See, that's happiness. You can easily see that.
Look at that.
Yeah. So really, really cool. There was there's a movie, and I'm trying to remember it. It was a trilogy of terror or something like that. It had James Woods in it too. But there was one where Stacy Keach, as an old actor, was in it, and he goes to a hair transplanting place because he's been bald and he thinks he's losing work and jobs and women won't date him. And he gets this full luxurious head of hair, and then he wakes up the next day and hair is growing all over him and everything. And he goes back and they pull some out, and they're little worms with like sharp teeth. And it was the same type of thing. They chose him to breed their young in, and so that was the hair transplant was.
I know what I'm going to be doing after this. I'm going to take a shower and wash my hair.
Yeah. That's where they get you. But so we did end up in a positive place, kind of. Belle managed to outsmart the last monster. And the reason, I was a little bit hesitant is because she pulls the switcheroo on you multiple times in this about who the real villain is of the story, who the real monster is. Mm-hmm. That constantly is, you can't really take anything for granted about who the villain is. So when we saw Rebecca, I had shields up and everything, but I had to wait until we got more into it to make sure that was the correct person. That's the great thing about the story's keeping you guessing.
Yeah.
So, all right. So then,
last thing.
Yes.
Stories keeping you guessing, right?
Right.
For the finale,
Yeah.
the character makes it, doesn't, home and not affected by the wolf. And then, here's the wolf, right?
There's the wolf, right?
But
do you recognize
this is the bedroom from Goodnight Moon?
Yes. Producer Patty should have that picture ready because I thought too. It's the bedroom from Goodnight Moon for the.
I fell out. I was just like, I love this author. I love her as an artist and as a writer and as a thinker, and I'm just blown away.
And again, it kind of reflects all the way back to the beginning of it, the idea of bedtime stories, and then you get scared at night and everything like that. This is a story that they tell little kids to make them not afraid of going to sleep in the dark, and that's the imagery you left with at the end. Yeah, I read that. I recognize that too. I downloaded a picture of it and said, "Keep this ready because we're in case." I thought I was going to be the clever one, but Goodnight Moon. She ends up in the Goodnight Moon room. The ending imagery is very clearly Little Red Riding Hood. It's a little girl in the red hood and everything, going home, afraid of wolves, but she makes it home and everything's safe. But the wolf is out there in the darkness. So you end up with this imagery of the bad stuff is just waiting out there for you to trip up, for you to make the wrong move. Something's going to come and get you. So that was kind of what I got out of it. Did not want to leave you feeling too good about yourself, too secure in that everyone's escaped the danger. No matter what happened all the way further, you think you're past it. There's always a wolf outside somewhere in the dark waiting for you. So,
sweet dreams.
Yeah. I think this is probably good for anybody like high school up or something like that, or maybe like middle school if your kids are, they're already watching horror movies and stuff like that, like the author was. But it's definitely, I think, aimed at adults with a lot of references to like fairy tales and things like that, and it's super imaginative work, imaginative layouts, imaginative lettering, which is something most people don't even pay attention to most of the time until you do something like this and it really kind of break the form down. And incredible use of color throughout here, and use by including it sparingly, but with impact every time, with all that dark. And then when you get color, you're always studying that aspect, saying, what does this mean? Why is one branch sticking out of the woods red? Is that a bloody hand? That was, it was all those, you're constantly, she controls where your eye moves with color in a lot of the images. And I just thought it was awesome. And then again, the just gorgeous vagueness of the stories. I had a little bit of that, almost Twilight Zone, type of quality, but Twilight Zone is usually more definitive endings than this. It's the mystery part of setup is about the same, but she leaves it a lot more open ended as to what the heck is going on and what's going to happen.
Yeah, no morality at the, like button at the end, just sort of the cold universe. Staring you back.
No Rod Serling coming out and telling you that this guy brought it on himself because he gambled too much or whatever. You can't roll dice with death. But this is one of my favorites. We tried an experiment last month. We read a mainstream book from the superhero book from Big Two, and that's probably not our jam. We need to keep with these indies. Through the Woods.
What a palate cleanser!
Yeah. Oh, gorgeous book. Buy this for people that buy it for yourself, buy it for, older kids, teenagers mainly, I would say. And, and certainly an author to look out for. Her name's Emily Carroll, a fantastic creator, writer, artist. And, you're going to find this at your bookstores, Barnes & Noble, that kind of place. You can possibly also find it at comic book stores, so that's something to check into. I was looking, I think not a traditional, Simon & Schuster published it, so not a traditional comic book publisher, but sometimes those end up in comic books anyways, especially the cooler stores where you can get coffee and stuff too. Find one of those, and they might have it. At the very least, they could order it for you. It is a book that we need to get. So that's my summation. And then you want to tell us what's coming up next month? Do you remember?
Is it Saga?
No, Saga's in January. We put one in between. What was it? No, I can't remember.
I can't remember either. Oh my God. Wait.
It's on the calendar. It was Saga, and then
because that was the one we flip-flopped a bunch about.
Yeah.
It is.
Everyone, just take a moment and look at the website you're probably already on.
It is. It was a lady in the ice. It looked like velvet in the snow, and it was written by the guy that you like.
Oh, it's the Hikatea. It's
Thank you. Oh, okay. It's the other one. I'm so sorry.
That's not the Whiteout is the one that we're talking about. The other one, which is a great book, but that's not that was one we suggested. The Hikatea with when
That's
producer
right.
Patty just bailed us out while we were off looking for it. But Wonder Woman story. It's probably my favorite single one-off Wonder Woman story, where Wonder Woman takes a woman under her protection and pledges basically in an ancient ritual to serve as her protector as long as she serves her. So she takes her as like an indentured servant, and she'll be this woman's protector who's running from the scary outside world. And then Batman shows up, and the woman has killed her husband. And so Batman, neither of them can let it go. Batman cannot let this murderer walk free. Wonder Woman cannot stop protecting her. So you end up with Batman and Wonder Woman going like this, and fantastic story. It's just so good. Because it's character driven and motivated, and you can see it from both characters' point of view, and it has that feeling of fittingly a Greek tragedy where it's just these two forces colliding. There's not even a good guy and a bad guy. It's just this is the way things have to be, and this sense of fatality, finality, that there's no way to escape fate, that kind of thing. Oh, beautiful story. So that's what we're reading next month. Everyone tune in for that, and then January, we're reading Saga, which if you've never read, please join us because December we're reading Saga because in January, Saga is coming back. It's been on hiatus for a year or two now. They took a break from it. Saga is, I'm sure, the #1 book for grown-ups that is in comic book stores right now. It is so good. It's written by Brian K. Vaughan, who wrote for Lost and Under the Dome. He was a showrunner for that. He does television stuff. And he also created Why the Last Man, which was just made into a TV show. He created The Runaways, which turned into a TV show. He's just one of the top writers in all the comics, and this is his masterpiece. And it's gorgeously illustrated by Fiona Staples, who is this beautiful, beautiful artist that does this very watercolory looking thing. And it's a true work of art, a collaboration, and we should all read this book. So that's in December. Next month is the Hikatea, where we get to see Wonder Woman beating up on Batman, which is super fun. And now we've got 2 months ahead. Pick up these books, come read, join with us, and we will see you guys in a month. Goodbye.
Bye.